Good.
All right, good afternoon, all. We are at 4 o'clock on the East Coast, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the applicant webinar for the USDA American Rescue Plan Technical Assistance Investment Competitive Grant Program. This webinar is designed to provide information about this funding opportunity and offer a space to ask questions about the program purpose, application process, and review process. My name is Ahlishia Shipley, and I'm a National Program Leader here at USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Next slide, please. Before we get into today's information, I would like to cover a few logistics. This webinar is being recorded, so I ask that you please keep your phones in or computer microphones muted throughout the webinar. Next, during the webinar, if you have any questions, they should be entered into the Q&A box. Also, a link to a recording of this webinar and frequently asked questions will be posted on the program page for this opportunity on NIFA's website within the next week. Next slide, please. With respect to today's outline, during the course of the webinar, we will cover the program's leadership team, program's basics, administrative requirements, the application process, the evaluation and review process, and also end with tips for success before we go into the question and answer period. Next slide, please. So there are many USDA team members who contribute to this program. Here are the members of our core leadership team. At NIFA, there's Brent Elrod, Science Program Analysis Officer, myself, Sydney Turner, Program Specialist. From the USDA Office of the General Counsel is General Counsel Janie Simtip, as well as Paula Reed Knox. Next slide, please. Before we dig into the program basics, I want to share a special message from USDA's General Counsel Janie Simtip. The message is pre-recorded, so please forgive any delay in the audio and video that you may experience. Sydney, you can go ahead with the video.
So wonderful to be with everyone today, and I just wanted to spend a few moments right here at the first of the webinar to extend some greetings from Secretary Vilsack and Deputy Secretary Dr. Bernard, but also from the Biden-Harris administration, because we are very, very thrilled that the American Rescue Plan Act technical assistance resources are becoming available. And as many of you may know, this was an historic investment on the behalf of Congress to provide resources, honestly, in ways that we have not seen before. Many of you have a long history with me because I've been where you are. I've been on the ground with farmers and ranchers and fishermen and forest landowners all around the country for over 37 years. And I've been where you are. I've been providing technical assistance and support to our nation's farmers and ranchers, fishermen, and forest landowners. And so I just wanted to spend a few seconds giving you my greetings this morning, letting you know that it's been my thrill to be involved in the leadership team to launch these efforts that provide technical assistance under Section 106 of the American Rescue Plan Act, to let you know that we are excited to partner with NIFA in this important work that we have ahead with each other. And the other thing I wanted to share with you is, as you go through the application process, please apply. But also please reach out and get an answer to any questions you have about the RFA itself. But for those of folks who are selected to move forward, we are wanting to be in deep collaboration with you. We are taking a new approach to our work at USDA to really partner more deeply with those who provide technical assistance to producers on the ground. We believe that true partnership and true collaboration is critical. So what you all may not have done in the past is we're going to actually be doing it in the context of this program as it rolls out and gets funded and you all are selected for funding. We're going to be collaborating deeply with you as a cohort of technical assistance providers, but also we're going to be pulling you close in with other technical assistance providers, and not just through American Rescue Plan Act Section 106 funds, but across the department, where we pull in and work closely with technical assistance folks on the ground. So I hope you're going to buckle up and be ready for a new relationship with USDA. We're super excited that you are taking part in the webinar today. We look forward to receiving your application, and I'm going to turn it back over to Ahlishia. Greetings, everyone. Best of luck getting your applications in. Reach out if you've got any questions, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks, Ahlishia.
Hey, we sincerely appreciate General Counsel Hip bringing greetings on behalf of the department and the administration, as well as sharing the ultimate purpose of this program. Next slide, please, Sydney. Thank you. So what is the goal of this program? The primary goal of the American Rescue Plan Technical Assistance Investment Program is to ensure improved understanding and equitable participation in the full range of USDA programs and services among historically underserved farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners and operators through supporting the organizational delivery of technical assistance projects and the establishment of technical assistance networks. Next slide, please. In this program, USDA will fund cooperators who will be working collaboratively, as Janie mentioned, with USDA and also with other cooperators to deliver targeted technical assistance programs and outreach to meet the needs of underserved agricultural producers through a cooperative agreement. I will now define these three key pieces highlighted here. So first, we define technical assistance as targeted services and support that really work to improve the understanding of and equitable participation of underserved farmers, ranchers, forest landowners, and operators in the full range of USDA programs and services through a range of activities. These activities could include, but are not limited to, strategies to identify unique needs and gaps in access, knowledge, and services, specialized consultative services, training, coaching, capacity building, as well as mentoring, focused on a range of relevant topics, including effectively accessing USDA programs and personnel, agricultural production, agricultural credit, rural development, financial literacy, risk management, mediation, cooperative development, and land access. Next slide, please. Outreach is defined as the strategies which assist the target audience to identify the programs and services at USDA that are appropriate for their farming, ranching, or forest land operations. When compared to technical assistance more deeply connects the programs and services to the unique needs of the producers and their operations and goes beyond simply identifying available services as is done with outreach. Next slide, please. We also want to define the funding instrument used for this program, which will be a cooperative agreement. A cooperative agreement is a form of federal assistance that reflects an agreement in which the federal government provides funding that has been authorized by law. The important element of a cooperative agreement is that it reflects the relationship between the federal government and a recipient where the government plays a substantial role in carrying out the project under the award. As General Counsel Hip mentioned, USDA will be deeply involved with the awardees carrying out this work. Next slide, please. So now there are key requirements of the ultimate recipients who will be referred to as cooperators. The cooperators must provide an array of promising and evidence-based specialized technical assistance services and outreach, provide a plan to capture proposed metrics for their activities and impact of those activities on the target audience through a sound evaluation plan, participate in ongoing coordination with USDA, and coordinate with all other recipients of the Section 1006 technical assistance resources in a manner that will be determined by USDA. There are also requirements related to the target audience that is served under these cooperative agreements. The target audience must include economically distressed or underserved farmers, ranchers, or forest landowners or operators, including socially disadvantaged producers, farmers and ranchers with limited access to resources, veterans, or other similarly situated groups. As a result of the technical assistance and outreach, USDA generally expects that cooperators will provide specific assistance in collaboration with USDA and the cooperators that informs equitable program implementation that is responsive to the unique needs of the target audience. Demonstrate the technical assistance and outreach model was successfully reduce barriers that agricultural producers face, particularly with accessing USDA programs and services. That they respond to the immediate need for agricultural business and market planning to support individual producers that have been impacted by the uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also build the capacity of fellow cooperators and USDA to more effectively deliver outreach and technical services through sharing cooperator expertise and experience and engaging in ongoing collaborative activities with other cooperators and USDA. Next slide, please. Now, who is eligible to apply for this program? Eligible entities include domestic nonprofit entities and domestic institutions of higher education. For nonprofit status eligibility, a letter from the IRS stating nonprofit status should be included as an attachment with your application. Please also note that only the lead applicant must meet the eligibility requirement. Project partners and collaborators do not need to meet the eligibility requirement, but their involvement should be justified as necessary for the completion of the project. Next slide, please. All right, so here are some key details about the awards that are important as you develop your proposed work plans and budgets. The minimum of $25 million is available to fund technical assistance projects. The maximum funding will depend on the scope and quality of applications received. NIFA anticipates making multiple awards under this funding opportunity. The minimum award amount is $500,000 and the maximum award amount is $3.5 million. The award length is required to be 5 years, and so that project period should be September 1st, 2022 to August 31st, 2027. And this is important that you follow these dates as you create your timeline and your budget. And also, very important, the application deadline is June 1st, 2022. Next slide, please. Here's a general timeline of competitive programs. The process can take up to 5 months from the release of the RFA to the proposals being submitted and reviewed to the official award being finalized. Next slide, please. So we have covered program basics. Now we'll move into administrative requirements for these projects. I'm going to briefly cover organizational management information, indirect costs, unallowable direct costs, and also the contact information for our awards management division. Next slide, please. So the first piece that I'm going to cover are organizational requirements. The organizational information that is required establishes the institutional files for NIFA award management. The first component of this information is a completed form 666, which is organizational information, all 3 pages, 1, 2, and 3. And these include policies and procedures of your organization's internal controls for administration and financial management of federal and non-federal funds, up-to-date financial information, an explanation of how your organization determines salary and wage rates, including sources of information and factors considered, and a list of current and recent federal awards, including grants, contracts, and cooperative agreements. Next slide, please.
Dr. Shipley, can you just adjust your mic a little bit?
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Sydney. Right. The other 2 components of the organizational information include the number of employees of your organization, including parent companies and subsidiaries if applicable, and time and effort reporting within your organization. Next slide, please.
Bring it up just a little bit more.
Louder?
There.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so the next piece is unallowable direct costs. As you develop your project and budget, please note that the following costs are unallowable under your project: entertainment, construction of permanent structures, equipment when it does not have a programmatic purpose, incentives to incentivize behavior, including cash or gift cards, promotional items such as t-shirts, pins, or conference giveaways, costs associated with advisory council or committee meetings, meals and food when they are not a part of a workshop or conference and when it is not essential for the continuity of a meeting, costs associated with alcoholic beverages, organizational costs to include fees to brokers, promoters, organizers, or management consultants, attorneys, accountants, or investment counselors. These are normally unallowable, and if you do want to include these, it requires prior approval from NIFA's award management. Also, participant support costs. These are generally unallowable, and it also requires prior approval from NIFA. And then also costs that are incurred after the award end date. Those are unallowable as well. So I also want to cover indirect costs, or those costs associated with facilities and administrative components. So indirect costs represent the expenses of doing business that are not readily identified with a particular grant, contract, project, function, or activity, but are necessary for the general operation of the organization and the conduct of activities it performs. With respect to indirect costs, if your organization or institution chooses to use an indirect rate, you must have a current negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. If your organization does not have a current negotiated rate, you may choose to charge a de minimis rate of 10% of the modified total direct cost. Recent changes to uniform guidance allows those entities that had a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement in the past that has expired to elect the 10% de minimis rate. I also want to note that the USDA annual appropriations Section 704 limitation of 10% indirect costs for nonprofit entities does not apply to grants under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Therefore, if an entity wants to establish a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, they should contact their cognizant agency to establish a rate or contact NIFA at the email address listed on the screen for assistance with determining their cognizant agency. Next slide, please. If you have any questions at all about these administrative requirements, please feel free to reach out to these contacts listed in our award management division. Now for the application process. Next slide, please. So these are a few important points regarding preparing to submit your application. So it's important to note that only electronic applications through grants.gov are accepted for this funding opportunity. It's important, if you are not registered already with grants.gov, to register right away, because the process could be take some time. And also check on your computer essentials to make sure that you have Adobe Acrobat, because only PDFs are accepted through grants.gov. And to also make sure that you are using a high-speed internet connection when you do upload your application. Places with these connections are universities, county extension offices, or libraries. And also remember to submit on time. I will reiterate again that the deadline is June 1st, 2022 at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next slide, please. Okay, another very important step is to download the application package, which can be accessed through the NIFA funding opportunity page shown here or through grants.gov. Next slide, please. So be sure to complete the forms in the application package, as well as to complete and add all of the requested attachments. There are NIFA-specific instructions and requirements in the application package that are just as important as the requirements that are outlined in the request for applications. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to cover key components of the project information required in your application. First, you're going to be providing a general summary of your project, which has a 250-word limit. And you will also need to develop and include a project narrative, which includes introduction and justification, objectives and outcomes, the approach, personnel and resources, outcome evaluation plan and reporting, and a management and partnership plan. Now, your project narrative can be up to a 20-page maximum. We are asking that a minimum of 1.5 space be used, and you can also include up to 5 additional pages for tables and figures. Within those tables and figures, it's important to note that the font should be no smaller than 11 points. 1-inch margins in the written text in 12-point font Times New Roman is preferable, but it is not required. Next slide, please. There are also many key attachments that need to be included with your application. These forms, the attachments include the bibliography or reference section, commitment letters, a fiscal agent letter if it's applicable to your project, and a data management plan. Additionally, each senior or key person on your project will also need to include a profile form, a biographical sketch, a current and pending form, as well as conflict of interest. I want to note with the current and pending support form that it should include any ongoing projects and any proposals that are currently under consideration from all sources, regardless of whether the support is provided through the proposing organization or is provided directly to the individual. For concurrent projects, the percent of time committed must not exceed 100%. In addition, the conflict of interest form is also very important to make sure that you submit it completely for each person, because it's important for us in assigning reviewers across proposals to avoid conflicts of interest. Next slide, please. So more forms and attachments include the budget, which is a form, the budget justification, which is an attachment, the subaward budget, and also the supplemental information form, which will require you to include the program code and the program name. And you can see them here. It's ARP and then ARP Technical Assistance Investment Program. And these are both included in the RFA. Next slide, please. So once you have completed all of the many forms and added the required attachments, here are some important steps in actually submitting your application to grants.gov. Again, you must submit electronically via grants.gov. Also, be sure to submit in advance of the deadline. You never know what may happen to your computer or issues you may encounter with uploading your application when you're right there a few moments before the deadline. If you do run into issues with the grants.gov system, be sure to reach out to them and get a case ID from grants.gov. Also, to remember that all attachments must be submitted in PDF and not be password protected. Grants.gov will not check this, so it's your responsibility to do that. And also check the grants.gov manifest for errors, and you can see instructions for that in the NIFA grants.gov application guide. Also, you may correct errors and resubmit your application through grants.gov up to the deadline, and we will accept the latest valid application that is received prior to the deadline. Next slide, please. Once you have officially submitted your application, you should receive a series of email notifications from grants.gov as well as NIFA. So the first emails from grants.gov confirm receipt of your application. The second indicates validation or rejection by grants.gov. The third indicates that it has been passed on to NIFA. Then if the emails that you should watch out for NIFA, the first one confirms receipt of your application by NIFA, and the second one will inform you if it has been accepted or declined for review by NIFA. So now we will cover information about the evaluation and review of your application. So there is a pre-acceptance screening of applications, which confirms the requirements that are in the RFA and in the NIFA grant are met. So late submissions will not be accepted unless there's documentation of extenuating circumstances. If there are, please contact me immediately. Also, contact me if you do not receive an email from NIFA within 2 weeks of the submission deadline. Also, please keep me updated if any changes occur with your email address, because that is how we will keep in contact with applicants. In addition to late submissions, NIFA will not accept any applications if they propose objectives or approaches that do not fit the purpose or the scope of this funding opportunity, if they exceed the maximum budget request of $3.5 million, if they fail to design a project for 60 months or 5 years. If they exceed the maximum page allowance of 20 pages plus up to 5 additional pages for tables and figures, and also if they fail to include any of the following: the summary and abstract, the project narrative, and associated components, which include the budget narrative, the current and pending support forms, the conflict of interest forms, and the letters of commitment from key partners. So NIFA's competitive review process is designed to be fair and unbiased. Review integrity is key for the ultimate success of our process. The review panel will be comprised of individuals representing diverse backgrounds with relevant training, expertise, and experience. The evaluation criteria are the only basis for peer review, and the only information in the application will be evaluated. Next slide, please. With respect to the roles of peer reviewers, they are trained and instructed to provide constructive and unbiased evaluation, protect confidentiality, and also identify and avoid conflicts of interest. We maintain confidentiality with respect to the proposal content and the identity of the applicants. The reviewer's identity also remains confidential. The reviews are only shared with the project director, as well as any panel proceedings. They are kept confidential as well. Next slide, please. So these reviewers will base their evaluation of the proposals on the following criteria, which are described in the RFA: partnerships and collaborations, the relevancy of the proposed project, technical merit, the achievability, the expertise and track record of the applicants, the adequacy of plans for evaluation, the data management plan, and the communication of findings and results beyond the immediate target audience. Next slide, please. We also want to offer a few tips for success in applying. So some good practices are to know your audience, who they are, where they are, what exactly they need, and how you will engage with them. Educate and assist them in ways that are meaningful to them based on their needs. Then also it's very important to develop a solid, clear plan of work that really offers a compelling case on the needs of your target audience and how you plan to serve them in ways that are responsive to their needs. The plan should be ambitious yet achievable. Call on recent data. It's also a good idea to be innovative and responsive and also avoid duplication. Another important part is that your proposed partnership should be promising and powerful. Next slide, please. Other tips for success are to have someone read your proposal and identify any areas that may lack clarity, and answer questions and identify other flaws and address them prior to submitting. And also it's important not to make errors related to missing parts, having different documentation submitted that's not in PDF, making sure that you're not over the page limit for the project narrative or tables and figures, that you're over the budget limit, or that you're even seconds or minutes late. Those are all fatal errors that could get your proposals rejected for review. Right. So now we have time for questions. And I just want to remind everyone, for some questions, we may need to get back to you. So either enter your email in the Q&A box or email us directly. So Sydney, could you please begin sharing the questions?
Yeah. So the first question that I have is, do the farmers need to be landowners or business owners at the present moment, or can they be striving to establish businesses?
The producers that are being served can be farmers, ranchers, landowners, or operators. We would probably need to talk a little bit more specifically about where your target audience is to make sure that they are an eligible target audience for this project. So please, if you could send me an email so we could talk more, that would be fantastic.
Okay. Our next question is, does the project have to be designed and operated for 5 years?
Yes, it is a project requirement that your project does need to be designed for the course of 5 years.
Next question I have is, what are some examples of activities engaged in by organizations that receive funds?
So some of these activities, they are outlined in the RFA, but they could include things like training around financial literacy, land access. They can include mentoring, special consultative services, coaching, a plethora of things that could be relevant to the target audience. But we can also talk about that as well. If you like to send me a email.
Next question I have is, if we have not received a federal award, does this prevent us from submitting?
No, if you have not received a federal award, it does not prevent you from submitting an application.
Okay, next we have, it was mentioned that participant incentives are not allowable but can be requested. Can you describe this process of requesting incentives to be allowable? When would it be appropriate to contact NIFA for permission to include these? Our organization often incentivizes farmer leadership activities and also M&E participation with incentives to make sure people are compensated for their time. So I think this is Jeanette.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Hi, this is Jeanette Jensen. And that question we would probably have to investigate further with the cooperator to get a better understanding of how that would relate to the project and if it was necessary for the project.
Okay, so we'll provide the contact information so that you can reach out and have those further discussions with the awards management division. The next question I have is, with regards to the 666 form under question 7, is it current awards or what time frame? And if we have over 100 federal awards, do you want them all listed?
This sounds like another administrative question. Jeanette, would you like to tackle that one?
Yes, I would. So if they have a large amount of awards, I think we would use the 5-year criteria. You know, if they have awards within the last 5 years, they would list those on under that 666 information.
Okay, perfect. So 5 years.
Correct.
The next question I have here is, would an application be looked upon less favorably if it included participant support costs, or does prior approval mean before even applying?
Right. So I'll tackle the first part of this. So the reviewers wouldn't be actually looking at evaluating if you've included an unallowable cost. That would be actually kind of evaluated once your application actually is recommended for an award. And if there is an unallowable cost, then our awards management division will work with you to figuring out how to either figure out something else for participant support costs or to remove that from your budget. And Jeanette, feel free to chime in on this question.
I think you answered that well, Ahlishia.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, next I have, is there any guidance or definition that you are using for economically distressed? Same question regarding underserved communities.
Sure. So USDA does not have an official definition for economically distressed or underserved communities. It would be the responsibility of the applicant to kind of use metrics that exist kind of in the data world to define economically distressed or underserved communities from your perspective.
The next question I have, are program announcements and other documents published in Spanish? So go ahead, Ahlishia.
Actually, we will probably have to get back with you on that particular question unless there is someone on the panel who has the answer to this question in terms of our program announcements and documents also available in Spanish.
I would just offer, if you a little bit more specific as to what you're looking for, if you want to send us an email, we could see if we could get that question answered for you. So the next question I have is, can a portion of funding received be used by the cooperator to pay a contractor to assist underserved individuals with filling out program applications and or writing applications for funding under program?
Yeah, so this would, if you're the target audience that you are seeking to serve, if they are wanting to apply or access USDA programs and services, that is certainly under the purvey of this opportunity to kind of provide those consultative or coaching services to them.
Next question, can you provide some examples of partnerships?
Well, this is going to vary among the applicants and vary with respect to the goals of your specific project and the target audience that you are wanting to serve. But an example comes to mind if you are wanting to reach a target audience where there is another entity or organization within the community that may have more of an entree to that community. If you're wanting to reach out to, underserved farmers in a particular area, there could be another organization in that area that works with those farmers, or you could team up with someone if you're wanting to provide financial literacy and your organization doesn't necessarily, that's not something that you do on the regular basis, teaming up with another organization that does provide, education and training on financial literacy or any of the other topics that your organization might could be an example. I don't have any specifics, but we could talk about that if you would like, if you want to send an email and just to give me a clearer idea of what type of partnerships would be necessary for the success of your project.
Okay. So the next question I have is, what is the difference between a cooperative agreement and a grant?
I could try to answer this question, but I'm going to hand the baton to Jeanette so she can give a more thorough answer.
Okay, and I'm going to give you a simple answer for this one. A cooperative agreement has substantial involvement by the federal government, and a grant is for the good of the public. And so really the only difference between it is a cooperative agreement is a form of a grant, but the only difference is the substantial involvement by the federal government.
Thank you, Jeanette.
You're welcome.
There's a question on an example of needs, and I'm pretty sure this is similar to the example of partnerships.
Sure. So the needs would be kind of based on the target audience that you're wanting to serve. So if you've done some type of needs assessment or, you kind of have a relationship with, groups within the target audience that you would like to serve, the needs could be, they could vary in terms of educational needs or technical assistant needs. There may be some type of need in terms of succession planning or needs around land access or, building capacity around financial literacy. So those needs can vary with the target audience, and it's important to really understand the needs of the audience that you would like to serve, and then you can base your project on what that specific target audience needs under the purvey of technical assistance and outreach within this funding opportunity.
Next question, is assistance with grant writing an eligible project activity?
This is, I would like to get back with a more accurate answer on this specific question.
Okay. So just send us an email with this question. I'm not seeing your name or email, so we want to make sure that we do answer your questions. So if you are still on, we would greatly appreciate it. The next question I have is, are USDA ARS scientists allowed to apply for these grants?
So the eligible entities to apply for these grants are nonprofit organizations, domestic nonprofit organizations, as well as domestic institutions of higher education. With ARS scientists on their own applying, under ARS, that would not be an eligible entity to my knowledge. But if an ARS scientist was collaborating with another eligible entity, that is allowed.
Okay. Next question. Can funding be used for research work as well? For example, doing surveys and interviews with participants.
So I will say that this particular funding opportunity does not fund basic research, but they do fund really understanding the needs of your audience. And so, doing things like focus groups and needs assessments and, surveys that are directly related to understanding the needs of the participants would be allowable.
Okay, thank you. The next question I have is, what geographic scope are you requiring, preferring for these projects? And do you prefer multi-state, statewide, or within one region?
So for this funding opportunity, there's no specific geographic scope that we are requiring, nor that we prefer. It all depends on what makes the most sense for the target audience that you are trying to serve and the goals and objectives of your particular project.
Okay. The next question that I have is, can you please confirm whether state government agencies that provide direct technical assistance to farmers are eligible to apply for these grants to expand the reach of the existing program?
So state government agencies aren't eligible as a lead applicant, but as a partner or collaborator with a eligible entity, which is a nonprofit organization or a institution of higher education. So if you would like to be a collaborator with those two entities, you could certainly be on a project as a partner or collaborator.
We have is, will the program have a separate review process and or criteria for institutions of higher education versus ag extension services and community-based nonprofits?
As of now, there is no separate review process for nonprofits versus institutions of higher education.
Next question, what are ineligible costs?
Okay, so on our previous slide, we covered unallowable costs during the presentation. Those were costs, unallowable costs that would apply in most cases. But you can also reference the 2 CFR Part 200, Subpart E, cost principles, and it would be in 200.420 through 476 that discusses what allowable and unallowable costs under grants and cooperative agreements.
Thank you, Jeanette. Question, can the program go across state lines?
Yes, the program can go across state lines.
Can grant money be used to pay for grant administration? For example, hiring personnel to manage the grant?
Yes.
Deadline was stated as 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but June is in daylight savings time. The hour of difference could be fatal for a project. Please clarify. It will be 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the current day of time in June.
Right. So just irrespective of where you are in the United States, the application would have to be submitted at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Next question. Can we request funds to leverage other funds to purchase farmland?
So this particular opportunity funds technical assistance services and outreach to ensure the equitable participation of underserved producers in USDA programs and services, and also to provide technical assistance and outreach.
Next question I have, would stipends for farmers to attend workshops or meetings be an allowable expense, or is this an incentive?
So this is Jeanette. I would say that the individual should email me and we can discuss that, because again, we would have to see its relationship to the project and if it would be an allowable cost.
Okay, thank you. Next question, would a wage for workforce development trainees working on the project constitute as an unallowable expense? Did you need me?
Jeanette.
Yes, and this question again, I would need more information to be able to respond. So again, I would have them respond to me and we would provide them with an answer.
Okay, thank you. Next question, what will be the nature of USDA directed activities, collaboration with other cooperators? For example, what would be the general time commitment for liaising with USDA and other cooperators throughout the period of grant?
Right, thank you for that question. And it looks like the next question is similar to that as well. So at this point, it'll be after the awards are made, the timing and the level of engagement with USDA and the other cooperators will be something that will be determined after the award is made.
Okay, thank you. Next question I have is, can one aspect of the project be training farmers as navigators and technical assistance providers to their peers, such as a TAs or technical assistance course?
Based on what you've described here, it seems to be that could be an activity under this program.
Okay. Is there a specific format required for the bibliography and references? Is it APA or MLA preferred?
There's not a specific format required for the bibliography or the reference list, and nor is there one preferred.
Can this include tutoring classes or in various word programs and financial processing programs for bill pay?
This is a question that I would probably need just a little bit more elaboration on to answer accurately. So if you could send me an email, I could answer that question more fully for you.
Okay. Will projects that include justified participant costs still be considered for award, or will those budget elements just be removed from the budget upon award if NIFA so chooses?
I'm sorry, I just need to read this so I can understand it.
You want me to?
Yes, please, Jeanette.
Okay, so again, this would be something that award management would reach out to the awardee at the time that we have their documents to discuss those participant costs to see if they are allowable for the project. And we would, if they're unallowable costs, then yes, NIFA would remove them from the budget.
Next question, I think, will be a Jeanette question. Can you clarify once more regarding the 10% de minimis rate? Must all entities have a negotiated rate, or is the de minimis rate permitted?
So if you do not have a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement with your cognizant agency, you may apply for the 10% de minimis rate. So it would be, or you can elect no indirect cost. You have those three options. You can have the negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, or the 10% de minimis, or elect no indirect costs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question, can states, municipalities apply?
The eligible entities for this program are nonprofit organizations as well as institutions of higher education. State municipalities cannot be a lead applicant for this program, but they can be a partner or collaborator with an eligible entity.
Next question I have, you may want to take a look at it. It's pretty lengthy. Just how involved is the USDA in the project? What if your organization is already doing technical assistance work, but wants to go deeper with more funds? If the organization applied for this funding, it seems to me that the cooperative agreement suddenly makes USDA the partner and overseer of this work you already do. This is not a favorable situation for the organization. In other words, you suddenly have a partner in your work that you have been doing without USDA. And we may need a little bit more clarity and need to talk offline.
Yeah, so I can only speak to how USDA may be involved as a matter determined by USDA after the award is made. And so, you know, involvement with any other funding that you do have, we would have to further discuss that through a phone chat or email.
Okay. How does this particular technical assistance opportunity differ from the 2501 program?
So that's another question that I'm going to have to send more accurate information through email. So if you don't mind sending me an email about that, and I can get back with you.
The next question is, would translation of program materials into local languages be an acceptable activity?
That certainly can be funded under this opportunity, if it's connected to technical assistance and outreach for underserved producers.
Okay. The next question that I have is, are technical assistance services and programming only limited to USDA offerings, or can an applicant also propose technical assistance activities around other programs that enhance farmers' efforts, for example, acquiring non-USDA funding or other loans, crowdfunding, and other ways to acquire lands.
This is another question that I would also like to get back to the person who posed the question. So if you wouldn't mind sending me an email so I could get an accurate response to you.
So the next question is, what percentage, if any, of the funds can be used to pay operating and technical assistance support for the lead applicant?
So I think I need a little bit of further clarification on that question, just because I'm not for certain if it's the TA that's being provided to the target audience or support for the organization itself, and then the operating piece. I'm just wondering, want to go a little bit further on, really what it is you're referring to in terms of operating support.
Would grant money be able to be used to pay target population members to speak to audiences about their experiences or needs, like a speaker's fee?
Jeanette, would you like to?
Sure. So if the conference was or the experience for where they needed to speak at is a necessary cost of the project, then a speaker fee would be allowable.
Okay. Next question I have is, why are permanent structures not fundable, considering part of the need may be addressed by a structure that would serve the target audience, for example, training space?
Jeanette, would you like to answer that question?
I think, again, I would need more clarity to answer this question because I'm not real sure what the question actually is when they talk about the training space. So I'd like to get more clarity to address that directly.
Okay. Next question. What is the reporting process, monthly, quarterly, or yearly?
So NIFA requires annual reporting, but through this cooperative agreement, the reporting will be determined, collaboratively with USDA and the cooperator.
Next question, page 7 in the RFA includes this statement: no agreement activity will be duplicative of other activities currently undertaken by the organization that are supported financially by USDA. Can you say more about this?
Sure. So USDA, well, NIFA prefers not to fund two different projects that are doing the exact same thing. So say for instance, this year, and it doesn't apply to awards that you already have, but say for instance, this year you were having two of the same applications submitted to two different programs. You could certainly submit those applications, the same exact application, to two different programs. But you could, if you were to be funded by both, one of them would need to be, removed from the application process. Now, if they are, a way to make them sufficiently different from each other in terms of the project scope or the target audience, who you're actually planning to reach, then you can submit those applications. But it's just so that USDA is not funding the same exact work for the same exact people at the same time.
Okay. Our next question is a letter from our local rural development office stating past successful aligned efforts in serving target audience acceptable?
So a letter from a past partner is acceptable. It's not required. Generally, we want to see letters where from organizations that are actually participating on your project and stating what their level of commitment is actually going to be with your project. Letters of support, they're fine, but we would like to stick with letters of commitment for partners that are actually going to be involved with your project.
Okay. Next question, is research training, for example, training ranchers to collect rangeland data eligible?
So I would need to learn a little bit more about what it is that you would like to do under this. So if you could send me an email so we could further discuss this, that would be great.
Okay.
And for all of these questions, it would if they're either directed to myself or they're directed to our AMD, it'd be very helpful if you put in the subject line ARP question, so we'll know that that is what that email message is about, and that will just help us out sorting through emails.
All right, I just wanted to say we are at the top of the hour. I am going to take one last question that I have here in the chat box. Please feel free to continue to drop them in. If you drop them in and your name is associated with it, you have registered for this event, we will be sure to provide you an answer via email to your question so that you are not left unanswered. For those of you that have put in anonymous questions, completely fine. Just please reach out to us via email so that we can get those answered to you as well. So the next question that I have here is, can you briefly explain how this technical assistance program differs from the outreach and assistance for socially disadvantaged farmers and rancher grants as far as objectives we should be identifying?
Sure. That is another question that I would like to provide, the best, most accurate answer. So if you could please send me an email about that, that would be fantastic.
All right, that will conclude our question and answer session. So we just have a few more slides that we want to get through, and I turn it back over to you.
So as we all reiterated throughout the question and answer period, if you have additional questions, particularly the ones that we did not get to or the ones that we specifically ask you to reach out to us personally to answer the questions better. If you have any other questions that come to mind, feel free to reach out to us. Also, here is the information for grants.gov, and if you're having any issues with submitting your application, there's the email address at the bottom of the slide. And Sydney, if you could go to the next slide. All right, and this is also, we just want to convey that USDA is an equal opportunity provider, employer, and lender, and our USDA non-discrimination statement is located on the USDA website. And lastly, I want to wish everybody the best of luck with pulling together your proposals and getting through the application process. Again, if you have any questions about anything, feel free, please, to reach out to us. So thank you for participating in the webinar and have a great evening.